Hi, welcome back to my channel. In case you're new, my name is Ola. I'm a portfolio GP and training program director in Coventry. Today, we've got a colleague who has joined me. Her name is Dr. Maro, and Dr. Maro is a GP registrar in Lancaster. One of the biggest questions I have received is how to get through the MSRA. And who best to address this important issue than someone who had recently written the MSRA herself? In fact, she did not only just write the MSRA, she scored very high in the MSRA, scoring well over 600. Without any further ado, let's get into it. Dr. Maro, nice to have you on the channel. How are you
Hello,
doing
Dr.
today?
I'm fine, thank you. It's so good to be here. I really appreciate the opportunity to be on your channel. Thank you for all the work you do for GP trainees, not just in your deanery, but all over the UK. You share so many resourceful information on your channel, and it's really been a benefit, great benefit to me personally as a GP trainee, and I'm just really grateful to be here. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so very much. And for those of you that don't know Dr. Maro, she has a really good YouTube channel, which I cannot recommend highly enough, covering every issue as it affects every stage of getting into GP training. And I'm sure that there are many more content she's got in plans for you. Dr. Maro, what is the MSRA?
Okay, so for those that don't know, the MSRA is the multi-specialty recruitment assessment exam. So
Mhm.
the multi-specialty recruitment assessment exam is used for assessing the readiness of medical doctors, for assessing whether they are ready to get into specialty training. So it cuts across different specialties, so from GP to psych, obs and gynae, anesthesia, and a whole host of others. It's a computer-based timed exam. I think it takes about 170 minutes for the exam at the moment. That may change because I think it has changed quite a number of times over the years. But currently, I think it takes about 170 minutes per
Mhm.
time.
Mhm.
So that's what the exam is. It's a theory exam, purely computer based. Has
Mhm.
two different sections: the PDS, which is the professional dilemma section,
Mhm.
and the clinical problem solving skills section, which is we call it CPS in short.
Mhm.
So the PDS really it's like equivalent to the SJT. So I think British medical graduates are familiar with that exam. A lot
Mhm.
of IMGs might not be familiar
Mhm.
with that type of examination because it's not really a core part of most curriculum in like Asian and African and Arabic schools, medical schools. So for a lot of people, it might be the first time they're encountering an exam in that format. So it just
Mhm.
basically assesses a doctor's ability to take certain decisions in different clinical scenarios. It
Mhm.
assesses your professional integrity, your understanding and awareness of patient safety issues,
Mhm.
communication with both patients, their relatives, colleagues, autonomy, understanding autonomy, confidentiality,
Mhm.
and just basically things like that. It's a more practical exam in the sense that it doesn't really have much to do with textbook knowledge, but
Mhm.
how you will address certain situations if you come across them in your day-to-day clinical practice.
Mhm. Mhm.
So that's the PDS. That's usually the first part of the exam. And then the second part is the clinical aspect, which is more familiar with most of us, as
Mhm.
that's already a core part of our medical curriculum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thanks so much for that. Now, I haven't scored over 600, and most of the questions I've received is about how do I approach this? So, how did you approach it that helped you score over 600 in this exam?
Okay, I think so. First of all, before I go into how I scored 600, I have to mention that this was my second attempt at the exam.
Mm.
So my first time sitting the exam was in 2023, September 2023. I was in the UK for about a year at that time. I was
Mm.
a stay-at-home mom taking care of my toddlers. Um, I had just written my PLAB 1 exam. So I spent about 3 months preparing for the PLAB 1. And then I got to hear about the MSRA, and a friend told me, I think you should write this exam because actually to give you a chance to get into specialty training since you want to do GP. I'm like, oh, okay. I didn't think I wanted to actually go work non-training jobs before going to specialty training, but she suggested it. I thought it was a good idea. I'm like, okay, since I already have some residual knowledge from my PLAB preparation, I might as well just go ahead and give it a go. And so I had 1 month to the exam time, and then I decided to channel most of my energy into the SJTs, which is the professional dilemma section, because I had no previous experience with that part of the exam. I still had some good clinical knowledge. So I spent 1 month going over the Oxford SJTs and there's another book, I can't remember the name of it. I think it's 100 Professional Dilemmas exam. So I went over those books, especially the Oxford SJTs, because it's quite extensive and it covers the different domains that are assessed in the PDS section of the exam. It's got answers, so you go over the question. I went over the questions, went over the answers, just to retrain my mind, adapt my mind towards how doctors should respond in certain scenarios, certain situations at a job. I think the good medical practice guidelines also helped a great deal at that time. So I used those two. I went over the MSRA practice papers as well. And I had a score of 541. With that score, I was able to get my first choice. But I was not ready. There were some other personal issues I just wanted to sort out before going into training. And I just felt that it was not the right time. So I decided to just forfeit my offer. And so 2024, I knew, okay, I'm going to have to write this exam again in September. So I started preparation. But this time I used 3 months to prepare because at this point in time, I had already realized that the stakes were a lot higher. Things had changed. At the time I wrote it, September 2023, I think the lowest score to get an offer was like 510 or something, like 505, which was really high. So even though I was able to get above that score, I knew that with this trend, it was going to get even higher as at the time I was writing in 2024. So I'm like, the stakes are a lot higher. There's a lot of pressure. More people are writing the exam. More people want to get into training. So it means that I have to put in a lot more effort. So I started preparing like 3 months ahead. It was stressful, I have to say. I was still a stay-at-home mom taking care of 2 very energetic toddlers. I barely had enough time for myself, talk less of time to even sit down and read. So it was quite a lot of pressure. But I started gradually. So I had to, first of all, create a structure, a timetable sort of. I created a timeline, a mental timeline, because I knew I had 3 months. I knew I needed to use just a very limited number of question banks because of the small amount of time I had. Because I do notice that a lot of people make mistakes by getting so many question banks, and that can really be a source of confusion. So I think it's always advisable to get maybe 2-3 question banks at most, focus on those, go over them at least once or twice if you can. And that will help to consolidate a lot of the information you're going to gain during your preparation period. So what I did after creating my timeline, I said, okay, because both the PDS and clinical sections contribute 50%, an equal amount of contribution to your total score, it means that I have to contribute a similar amount in terms of percentage towards my preparation. Because I know a lot of my friends and others have mentioned that the mistake they made was spending more time on the clinicals and just neglecting the PDS towards the later time of their preparation, towards the time of the exam. And I don't think that is ever a good idea. So I'll advise that you commence your preparation for both the professional dilemmas and the clinicals concurrently. So what I did was, for example, once I start, if I'm studying probably cardiology questions today, tomorrow I'll open my Oxford AJTs and do maybe 20 questions. Then the next day I'm continuing with my cardiology. The following day, another 20 questions. So I was doing alternate day studying of both sections of the exam. Sorry. So this helped make sure that I always had both sections of the exam at the back of my mind. I was gaining grounds, gaining knowledge in both aspects of the exam at the same time without anyone lagging behind. Thankfully, I also had the advantage of having had the experience of the exam in the past. So I could understand the formats better. I had better assessment of how the exam was going to present itself. So that also helped me. If you have not had the exam before, and maybe you have been out of medical school for years, because I had been out of medical school for about 6 years prior to this exam. I've been working, in clinical practice back home, which I know a lot of people might be in the same shoes. Or if you've been in a specific specialty for a couple of years and your general medical knowledge is a bit shaky, I think there's a misconception that, okay, because you're a consultant in probably hematology, you're a very excellent doctor. And you most likely are a very excellent doctor, but this exam is a very very generalized exam. So it will mean that you will need to go back to the basics, medical school basics, the clinical aspects. You'll need to cover all the different specialties as though you are just coming out of medical school, just finishing your F2, your second year of internship, role, just so that everything you're up to speed with regards to the current guidelines regarding management of common conditions in the other different specialties and subspecialties. So one thing that I did that really helped me was I started with past medicine. There are a number of question banks. Past medicine, I found it very robust. It's very bulky. So if you're going to use it, you need to start it very early. You need to devote a lot of time to it. But I really liked it because it gave me a very good, solid foundation for the different specialties. It has very good explanations per question. So it's a very, very good refresher if you know you're lagging behind with regards to clinical knowledge about all the different specialties. So I'll go, so like, for example, in a week, I'll spend a week devoted to cardiology. The following week, I'm doing respiratory questions, like 200. The following week, I'm doing gastroenterology. So like specialty by specialty, so that you consolidate the information more effectively. The more you see certain questions, the easier it is to recognize certain patterns and answer the questions more accurately. So I wasn't mixing the questions in the initial part of my preparation. Another thing that I did, was to, I think I mentioned that with the professional dilemmas, I went over the good medical practice guidelines.
Yeah.
So that also helped. That helped me to understand the different domains better. Because the honest truth is that for this professional dilemma questions, no matter how many question banks you go over, there's a very, very high chance that on the day of the exam, you will not see any familiar question. The questions are always pretty much brand new. However, the concepts that are tested are very, very similar. So the most important thing as you're going over these scenarios in your question banks and in the Oxford, try to grasp the concepts, understand what is being tested per question. So a question might present itself, and once you understand the good medical practice guidelines and you do quite a number of practices at home, you would realize that you're able to quickly identify what is being tested, whether this question is testing my ability to escalate correctly, or is testing my ability to recognize my limitations when to involve seniors, or how to communicate empathetically and professionally with patients or with their relatives or with colleagues, how to address fitness to practice issues that you notice with yourself or with a colleague, So it's very, very important that you grasp these concepts very early in your preparation, so that as you're practicing, you are strengthening your skills in these areas. Yeah. Okay, so like I mentioned in the earlier period, I did spend most of my time doing past medicine, Oxford. I went over the Oxford SJT from beginning to the end once. And then I think I also did the past medicine SJTs, which was also helpful with understanding these concepts that I mentioned. Then towards the end of my preparation, like in the final month, I spent that time on Samson's. So Samson is also an MCQ bank. The questions are a lot shorter compared to those that you see in past medicine, but they are a more accurate representation of what you see in the exam. In the exam, the clinical questions are not so long and bulky. So that was very helpful for me. I went to write Samson. I went to write the mocks as well. The mocks are really helpful, especially in your last month of preparation. So it's very helpful to start the mocks as early as possible. at least you can give yourself a target of doing 1 mock a day. And when I say mock, I mean combining both the PDS and the clinical problem solving skills aspect of the exam, doing them at one sitting with a timer. And I'll always advise that you do it with a timer. You time yourself, give yourself maybe 15 to 20 minutes shorter time compared to what you would expect in the exam. So, for example, in the exam, like I mentioned, it takes 170 minutes to do both sections. That's what is provided for you in the exam setting. So you can give yourself like 115 minutes instead, and then see how well you work with that time. And the more you practice with a shorter time, the faster you get at addressing these questions on exam day, the faster you're able to go through the questions and the options, more accurately. And you're not as stressed when it comes to exam because it's a very time-sensitive exam. There's a lot of pressure on exam day, coupled with the anxiety and, just thinking about all that is at stake and all of that. So it's always better to practice with a shorter time during your preparation period. So I did that. I was doing at least 1 mock a day, or sometimes I got the chance to do 2 mocks a day, timed mocks. And another thing I did with regards to these mocks was I gave myself a goal of getting more than 90% as a total score during my mocks. So if I see that, okay, I've done a mock, I didn't get up to 90%, it means that I'll flag those sets of questions. I'll probably repeat them again sometime in the near future. And so I kept on doing that. I think those are some of the things I did, and I believe they were helpful, thankfully. Thank God for grace, because it's not the easiest, especially if you're working. For example, I wasn't working. I was working, but not in the hospital. I was working at home, which is a different scenario.
You were working full time, 24 hours work.
24/7 shift.
No rest, no annual leave, nothing.
Nothing, no sick leave.
Wow.
Oh my God, no study leave, nothing like that. So, but if you're working in the hospital, I can imagine that it would also be quite stressful if you're having shifts and things like that. So, knowing how to work around the times that you have is very, very important. It will require a lot of sacrifice. So that's the truth. It's not an exam you can wing, because that's one mistake people make. They think, oh, MSRA, can I just try it? I would never advise that you just try the exam. You should not just try it. You should prepare for the exam like you're going to war. Because the exam has taken on a new format, and it's like, it feels like a battle. There's so much competition right now, and the rules regarding the exam are changing quite rapidly because of the increasing competition ratios. So I think last year, those who sat the exam in September last year and got above a certain score were not permitted to sit in January this year. Things like that. So the rules could change, and you find out that, okay, you got above a certain score, but that score was not good enough for you to get an offer. However, because you got above that score, you're not permitted to write in the next set. So you don't want to gamble and risk that happening again. And therefore locking yourself out of the opportunity of, getting another chance to sit the exam. So if you're going to sit the exam, make up your mind, I'm sitting this exam, that means I have to put in all my very best. If you don't think you're going to be able to put in your best, there's no point. Just wait and prepare for the next. That's the advice I'll give. Just try and put in your best. If you know you're going to sit the exam. I think for now that's that's all I can say for now. Yeah, with regards to how
that was very, very, very robust. Thank you. I remember when I got into general practice training years back, you could score in the mid 400s. I think I scored about 480 something, 460 something, and I got into my first choice. These days, if you want to get into general practice, and you want to be sure you even get an offer at all, irrespective of where you choose, you need somewhere close to the mid 500s, 520, 530. If you are now someone perhaps based in London, based in Manchester, Birmingham, want to get in, you need to score in the late 500s to even get into those places. In other specialties that use the MSRA, like psychiatry, like radiology, cardiothoracic surgery, neurosurgery, you even need to score even higher, to even stand a chance of getting in. And that's the whole point of having this lovely conversation really with Dr. Maro, so she can share her lived experience. She has recently written it, so she can share exactly what she did. Now, having said that, Dr. Maro, what are your top tips for those? Because I've got a lot of people asking me, how do I get into training? I did last year, I couldn't. What are your top tips for someone who wants to score high enough to be able to get into their desired specialty?
Okay, so thanks for that. I think, like I mentioned, the foundation is having a goal in mind, understanding the terrain and knowing that there is a lot at stake. To me, that was my top motivation. I only wanted to apply for GP, not radiology or any of the other specialties that required higher scores. However, I knew that the competition ratio had greatly increased over the last couple of months to a year or two. So it means that I had to put in a lot more effort. And that requires structure. Anything that requires effort and would hopefully give a good outcome will always require structure. So the number one top tip is creating a structured timeline for your preparation. So knowing exactly what dates the exam falls on, knowing where you currently are, and knowing how many months you would want to commit to preparing for the exam at that date. So create a timeline. Tell yourself, I'm preparing for this exam. I wouldn't recommend preparing for this exam with less than 2 months. 2 months is risky, but it is very doable. It's risky, but it's very doable. That will require you committing, not working and things like that. But if you are working, you're committed to other things, I'll advise that you prepare for this exam 2-3 months, minimum of 2-3 months. So you create that timeline for yourself. You then, secondly, you research and select 2, at most 3 question banks that you think will be of benefit to you in the course of preparation. And then with regards to the number of questions per these question banks, you can now structure your time. So for example, let me give you a practical example. So for example, I found out that past medicine, which was my number 1 question bank, had 3,000 questions. So in my mind, if I want to complete 3,000 questions in 3 months, how can I possibly structure my time in such a way that I'm able to cover these questions within a certain period of time? I think I gave myself the goal of attempting 50 questions per day in the first 2 weeks or so. So I was attempting 50 questions per day in the first 2 weeks. And that is roughly, mostly weekdays. So that's roughly maybe 400 questions. Weekends, I'll attempt like 100 questions per day. So that would be like 800 plus 400 plus, like 1,200 questions, roughly. I can't remember the math, but something like that. And that already is almost half of the question bank.
Yeah.
So give yourself practical goals. You might not be able to do 50 questions a day. If you're able to do only 20 questions, you spread it out across the time that you have and see how much you're able to cover with that. Just work with a goal that you think is practical to you. 50 might be small for some people. Some people can do 100 questions a day. At a point in time, I was able to do 100 questions a day when I started getting more familiar with the question patterns, with the topics, with the answers, with the concepts that were being tested. I started doing more questions per day. So once you're able to structure it that way, split the questions across weeks, then you are now able to plan yourself very well. You can now determine that, okay, I'm spending 2 weeks doing so and so specialties. I'm going to be alternating a high yield area, for example, cardiology, with an equally high yield area that I'm weaker in. So for example, dermatology questions will always come, but a lot of people may not be familiar with some of the cases. It's not something that is a generally well taught area in medical school, or even that you encounter in your day-to-day clinical practice. So those areas, rheumatology, dermatology, maybe ENT, ophthalmology, things that you don't really see day to day, those smaller those subspecialties, you also factor them into your preparation so that you're not missing out on any area. So neurology, cardiology, endo, those are the major areas that will definitely come with a higher number of questions on exam day. but you also do not neglect those other subspecialty areas. So work with them concurrently as you're preparing. Another very important tip is to ensure that with the SJTs, if you find that the questions and the answers you come across in the Oxford SJTs or in the MSRA official papers or the UKFPO official papers, which are very excellent resources, you find out that the questions you don't seem to be understanding the rationale behind the answers behind them. You can have a study partner or a study group where you explore and discuss some of these answers. I've come to realize that for some of my colleagues who were initially struggling with them, by the time they started to discuss and reason out these answers with another colleague, you start to see things from a different perspective. It just might be that your understanding is a bit warped because of maybe your personality trait or your past experiences at your place of work, and or maybe the culture in the places you've worked in before are not very similar. But hearing another person explain these things, you get to see, okay, so this is the perspective. Sometimes just reading it from the question bank might not be sufficient, but hearing another human being explain why this might be so can really help to, rewire your brain and, help you change the way you think through some of these situations and these scenarios. So I think getting a study partner, also a colleague who you are preparing for the exam with, you may not be reading together every day, but someone that you can easily just message and say, oh, this case, I saw this case, why do you think the answers are this? It can really help. So that's another very important tip. Okay, so let me just go through, let's see, what other tips? Okay, my battery is dead. Right. All right, so another thing that I think helped me was, apart from, I mentioned the timed mocks towards the end of the exam, then your booking. One very important thing is the booking of your exam venue and time. I'm going to use the two exams that I wrote, my experiences in the two exams that I wrote. The first exam, I did not know that the invitation to the exam had been released. So once the invitation to the exam is released, you now have the opportunity to book a venue and a time. I did not know that it had been released at a certain time, I think 12 p.m. that day. I got to know around 4 p.m., 4 hours later. By that time, the location was the location at where in my city, the venue had all been fully booked. So I had to travel to another city, like an hour away. And then the times in that city were also almost all taken. So I think the only available time was like 2 or 3 p.m. So that's what I was stuck with. And I will be very honest, that really affected my performance. Even though I got a relatively good score, 541, I know that at a point in time during the exam, I have to put my head on the table to take a very brief rest because I was fatigued. I'm not a late afternoon person. Usually by afternoon, my energy levels are already dropping. So I'm ensured that during my the second attempt of my exam, I got a venue that was close to where I was, and that it was an early morning exam. So just gauge the kind of person that you are. Some people do better when their brains function much more effectively in the afternoon. Some people are early morning starters. So to determine how you are and tailor your exam booking to that. I know it may not seem like a big deal, but from my very personal experience, it really, impacted on how I was able to, function during my exam. I couldn't concentrate because I was so tired. I had to take a break. That affected my time, management, because I just couldn't focus and all of that in my first exam. But in the second exam, I was much more, I had breakfast. I had gotten to my venue on time. I was just up fresh and early, ready to go. So also very important thing that you should think about. I think I've also mentioned that with regards to your question banks, not more than 2 or 3 at a time, because that will help to ensure that the information you have gotten from these different question banks, everything is consolidated, you're not confused, because sometimes explanations from different question banks may vary. And then at the time of the exam, when you're trying to reason through what the answer might be, you could get confused because you might then start thinking, oh, you could mix up the information you got from one question bank and think that, okay, the answer is supposed to be the one from you saw in another question bank because the differences in the explanations, So it's very important to not bombard yourself with too many it's better to go over 2 question banks twice than to go over 4 question banks once. That is a very important thing that you should put into consideration. I think, yes, those are some of the top things off the top of my head that I can think about that really helped my preparation. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so very much, Dr. Maro. A couple of things I would just like to chip in is that the competition ratios have changed. A lot of people are seeing it from what they knew back years back. Things have changed. In fact, I recently did a video a couple of months ago on competition ratios and what specialties are more challenging to get into. We'll attach the link to that video. The other thing is the approach to the questions themselves. I see that our psyche many times can be a psyche of self-validation, where I just want to assure myself that I'm still brilliant, I'm still a good doctor, and I'm just interested in scoring high in those question banks I'm doing, rather than even the questions had got right, rather than thinking, okay, if the question was asking instead of the gold standard diagnosis that the question had got right, asked if it was asking about what the first line in management is, what would that be? What the second line is, what would that be? If certain things changed in the body of the question, what would that be? That should be the mindset in in studying these question banks, because what that does is to widen the scope of knowledge such that anything that is tested, one has been at some point been able to think it out such that one can then answer it. A final note before I let Dr. Maro go is that it may be more difficult than before, but it's still doable. It's still doable. Reason why Dr. Maro came on is the fact that it is doable. She has done it. She has done it despite very difficult circumstances. She's done it. And I know there are many of us watching either at work or at home who are equally in difficult circumstances, who are working full time, who have other family commitment and even other commitment outside the family, yet we want to put in the time we need to do this exam, just to say it is doable. Many people have done it before you. You won't be the first, you won't be the last as well. And you will also tell others as well that this is how to do it, this is how to do it. So if you've done it multiple times and that tiredness is creeping in, that thoughts of, oh, am I actually good enough is creeping in, that loss of confidence is creeping in. Um, listen again, listen again to all what Dr. Mara said. Sometimes only a change in course, a change in direction, sometimes a bit of a retreat to ask, what have I been doing wrong? Sometimes a friend, a discussion, a partner, as Dr. Maro mentioned, this is JT. How do you, what's your thought about the reasoning behind this answer can be the way. Finally, many of us at various stages of our careers, I've had colleagues, consultants reach out, say, oh, I've struggled with this exam. Let's not forget this exam is at the level of a foundation doctor, year 2 doctor. So our consultant, our senior doctor for that matter, might approach the SJT. It may be different. And what is expected of an F2 doctor is completely different from what a consultant would do. So that thought needs to be factored in as well as we approach those SJT. And I will put a list of the materials that Dr. Maro mentioned on the page as well, so that for whoever wants to go through them. Any final thoughts at all, Dr. Maro?
Yeah, so I just want to encourage those who have written the exam 2-3 times. It like Dr. Ola rightly said, it just might be that you just need a change of strategy. don't think that you are a failure, because when it comes to failing exam, especially as someone who has always been a high flyer, or doctors generally are considered high flyers. So sometimes failure it hits us harder than others. And it can be quite discouraging. But I just want to encourage you that it is very doable. Even if you have written the exam 3-4 times before and you're going again, it's still very, very doable. I have someone who used to watch my channel, and she actually came to tell me that this was her 4th attempt, and she's just grateful that her eyes have been open to reveal, to see the different ways she had been making mistakes, the different wrong assumptions she had about certain aspects of the exam, and how all of that has changed her strategy. And thankfully, she got a score of 535 after consistently getting like below 450. So it is very, very doable with just a change of strategy and renewed understanding of certain aspects of the exam. Don't give up. It is very, 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 very doable. And I wish you all the very, very best in the upcoming exam. Yeah.
Thank you so very much, Dr. Maro. I'm sure everyone who has the opportunity to see this will want to say a very big thank you for your time coming to talk to myself today on the subject of MSRA. I'm sure many, many, many people will find your thoughts and your practical steps that you are taking. They will find them very, very helpful. We really, really appreciate you and wish you all the best in the remainder of your training.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks.